You are moving.
How did you know about that?
I did. I mean, there wasn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got five. We got $10,000. 5 of it was for police and fire, the citizens committee, and the others for the camera looking that way.
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes.
I would like to call the Maumelle Planning Commission meeting to order. Mr. Neri, do we have any announcements?
No announcements this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the October 22nd meeting. You all have copies of those minutes. Are there any additions or corrections?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? The motion carries. Public comments on non-agenda items. I don't have any of those. So at this juncture, we will open the public hearing phase. We don't have any old business. Move right on into new business. Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would remind the Commission that with the exception of the first item on the agenda, all the rest of the items are recommendations to the Maumelle City Council. First item on the agenda is the preliminary plat of Carnahan Industrial Park. You have the second staff review in front of you. There was a few housekeeping items that needed to be clarified, which have been. The mayor wanted a little something cleaned up today. I have that revised preliminary plat on the table to my left. That's also been done. You have letters from Mr. Rahman and Assistant Chief Payne in regard to this development as well. There will be some land donated to the city and some mitigation rights, I understand, along with this. Pending any commissioner comments, staff will recommend for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Any commissioners have any questions of staff?
I have a request.
Mr. Johnson.
And I should have mentioned this at the subcommittee meeting, Mr. Ritter, and I apologize, because we required it on a subsequent plat that was just down the street. Could you list the owner, which is the school, for that 50-foot buffer, if you would, please, on the east side of your client's boundary?
Are there any other commissioner questions? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the preliminary plat of Carnahan Industrial Park subject to commissioner and staff comments.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussions? All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Neri, next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is a request for a conditional use permit to locate a child care facility in a C3 zoning district. You all have the staff analysis of this proposal that went out by email. You also have letters from Assistant Chief Payne and Mr. Rahman on this proposal as well. Mr. Charles Davidson is here this evening as the owner. Ms. Tommy Redden is here representing Child Care Network, and their project team is here as well. As I mentioned before, this is a recommendation to the Maumelle City Council. The site plan and landscape plan for this development automatically follow with it. However, their approval remains with you. So they'll follow this, and it'll automatically go into the City Council, but you'll then vote on the site plan and the landscape plan separately after this. You see some of the staff concerns on the analysis, and I think some of you probably share that. As you also see on the staff analysis, there are many much more obtrusive uses that could go on this property and be permitted by right that would not move on to the City Council, whereas if they met all the requirements out of that code book, you'd have to let them locate there. Some of the things that I listed were automotive body shops, machine repair, car lots, lumber yards, and I can go on and on. I would have liked to have seen a couple of things done that we talked about in subcommittee meeting. I think more room could have been created for the site by simply altering the building position a little bit. It is right next door to David's Burgers, which generates a lot of traffic, but the reality of it is, gentlemen, that traffic on Country Club Parkway is going to continue to increase. It's going to increase whether this lot develops commercially or whether it doesn't. It will continue to increase. You also have to realize that a national franchise with a drive-through open 24 hours a day would be a permitted use by right on this property. Staff is going to recommend for a due pass recommendation to the Maumelle City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Commissioner, I was going to say that we do have a letter that David had sent in. He's recusing on this because of relationship with the applicant. So,
This is for items 2, 3, and 4 on the agenda.
any commissioners have any questions of staff? Hearing none, Mr. Davidson, you put in a comment card. Would you care to address?
Just here to answer any questions if anybody had any.
If you would, Skip, name, address for the record.
Charles Darwin, Skip Davidson, P.O. Box 1300, Little Rock, Arkansas 72203, formerly of Lake Village. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioners have questions?
Don't have any questions. I got a comment or two. While I realize that this property is older than the rest of the subdivision that it goes through as far as its zoning, originally this was C3 when it was first laid out, and behind it was industrial. Then Country Club of Arkansas came along with it, PRD, and we got residential. So we have residential that's really close to C3, which is one of our most disruptive, or is it?
It is the most disruptive commercial category.
And the other issue I have is with the traffic. And I don't know how we're going to fix that. If this was a quiet business, it would probably be a little less problem with traffic. I see a small issue in the morning. I see a much larger issue in the afternoon because David's Burgers is doing a bang-up business. I have driven by there quite often, and at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the drive-through is backed up into the entryway. So there's a real great potential with somebody not paying attention to have an accident or with a kid running out, going from one place to another. But again, this is not the property owner's fault. It's just the way it is. It could be worse. It could be a whole lot better. But I don't see any way to fix it that I can think of right now. And that's all the comments I got.
Thank you, John. Any other commissioners?
Mr. Neri, we discussed the subdivision committee that and entertained some of those comments. Did you receive any other calls on the property since we convened?
The final count was 11. 1, no opinion. 2 in favor. 8 against.
And can you just, in summary, the ones that were in opposition?
Yes.
Did any particular reason?
The citizens who were in opposition didn't want anything to locate there.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Mr. Ritter. That's kind of, I guess,
Mark Rutter with Holloway Engineering.
thank you, sir.
Welcome, Mark.
Interruption.
Procedural.
On the replat, a couple things I've got on there. One of them, and I'm guessing you're picking this up from an old plat. You
That's
have
correct.
on there for some reason National Bank of Arkansas, 4004 McCain Boulevard.
Probably doesn't own it anymore.
Huh?
Yes, probably doesn't own it anymore.
No, hadn't for a long time.
Yes.
Might want to change that.
It has been changed on this copy.
Okay, and then under the general notes, number 1, and it's a little confusing, says no access will be allowed on Maumelle Boulevard. It does have access on Maumelle Boulevard, does it not?
No, it does not for this lot, and it could not, so I'll remove that note. But actually, the
Oh.
plat, though, I'm sorry, the plat,
It goes with the plat.
that's right,
It
the
does have
plat,
the lots on there.
and there are lots adjacent.
I was thinking.
I was too.
Of Arkansas.
Sorry.
Yeah, my mistake.
And, yeah, if the time comes, the replat will be done at a staff level.
I got you. Okay.
I would like Ms. Redden to come for the benefit of those that didn't hear or weren't at the subdivision meeting and just say a few words about the business she does and some of the safety things, as you mentioned, John. And it'll only take a few minutes, and I'd just like, her to be able, she was kind enough to come, I'd like her to say a few words.
That's acceptable. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Tommy Redden. I'm with Child Care Network. My address is 530 Scarlet Oaks Drive in Benton, Arkansas, 72019. So most of you did hear my little sales pitch last week, but Child Care Network, like I said, has been going in business for 25 years. We started in Columbus, Georgia with 2 locations. We're now in 11 states and have over 200 schools and serve over 10,000 children within our group. There are 11 located in Central Arkansas. There are 7 in Sling County. There are 3 in Little Rock and 1 in Conway. We do, we do childcare, and we think we do childcare well, and we would like to bring an additional quality childcare center into your city. What I can say about childcare and early childhood development, as most of you would hopefully know, is that the more that you invest into early childcare in the younger states, the better, or the younger ages, the more successful the adult will be in your city, and the more better of a citizen to your community will be if they have the good start in the beginning. I can tell you that 90%, as far as brain development, 90% of a child's brain will develop within the first 5 years of life. And so we say you get one chance to do it, and we want to be a one-stop for those parents to do it right. As far as the traffic, I have looked, I have a similar school about the same size and a very heavy intersection. It's in Benton. It's on Alcoa Road, which some of you may know is very highly driven, probably not as much as the boulevard, but they are expanding and doing road construction at that site as well. My center that is there is directly next door to an elementary school, Hurricane Creek Elementary School, and our center and our lot shares the driveway are right next door to each other, similar to David's Burgers and what this would be. That center also, ironically, has 29 parking spaces that was proposed here. And
You now have 30.
Okay, good. I had them count today, and so there was 29, and the population at this school is 173 children, and so it's a little bit bigger than our capacity would be at the proposed Maumelle site, and we employ 27 people at this center. And during the peak times, which the peak times there are a little bit different than the peak times here, but peak times are probably pretty close in number as cars are coming in. This is a very, there's not a stoplight there. The intersection has a crosswalk, and there are several children because of the neighborhoods that are right there that cross the street. So there are crossing guards there, but traffic there gets backed up pretty heavily. The same that I would predict something close. I may be comparing apples and oranges, but in the mornings and when school lets out in the afternoon. And we have 4 buses at that location that travel and pick up students, and we don't have a a traffic problem, a parking problem. Our parking lot does not get backed up really at all. The only time that we have congestion in those times is when we drop our children off. We drop them off as closely to the front door as we can, and so we don't allow parents to drive through. So there may be a couple waiting for us to unload the children safely, and then our bus will park, and then parents can park and get out. But we don't really have the traffic problem there that would be somewhat similar to what y'all are predicting here at this school. So
Do you anticipate buses for this school here at Bone?
I don't know how many they're planning on purchasing, but I would predict 2 because we will be transporting hopefully school-age children.
And these will be buses, not the vans that we discussed earlier?
They're kind of both. They would be considered a short bus. They're 14 passenger. We call them buses, but they're on a van chassis, and they're bright yellow buses that we call them buses, but they're on a van chassis, but they are 14 passengers, so it's not considered a school bus, but it's safer than just a 14-passenger cargo van.
For the benefit of the commission,
Sure.
30 parking spaces were required based on a staff proposed by Ms. Redden of 20 at this location. However, that is a split staff, you might say. There could be 13 people working in the morning time, maybe 10 in the afternoon, maybe 13 again in the evening time. So all 20 are not there at once, which gives them plenty of parking.
Any commissioners have questions of the applicant? None? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone here tonight wishes to speak on this issue, either for or against? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for a conditional use permit for a child care facility in a C3 zoning.
Motion to recommend to, this goes to City Council, right, Mr. Neri?
Yes, it does.
Motion to recommend to City Council do pass for the site plan for the Child Care Network, pending any other commissioner staff comments.
A motion, do I have a second? Second. And I have a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Neri, site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the site plan for the Child Care Network. Staff is going to recommend for a contingent approval, that contingency being the satisfaction of Mr. Ramon's engineering comments when that phase comes, as well as any other commissioner comments this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Any questions of staff by the commissioners?
One, I think I misspoke. That should have been for the conditional use permit, correct? I believe I said for site plan.
Yeah.
The conditional use permit's moving on. This one stays with you, the approval.
Please correct that. Thank you.
All right, hearing no questions.
Site plan need to fix the number of parking places.
Have you got the new,
Yes,
Okay.
we've got the new one in. We don't have it, but
I do.
Tim's got it. Any other commissioner comment? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion on the site plan.
I'd recommend approval for the site plan for the Child Care Network.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Friendly notation, recommend the site plan approval contingent on engineering and
Staff comment.
staff comments. Okay.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next item is the landscape plan. Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff would recommend for approval as resubmitted.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioner comments?
I have one. Mr. Ritter? On your site plan, I seen that you added the sidewalks, and I appreciate that. The fencing, how far is that from back of curb on the,
It's about 20 feet from Country Club Parkway, a little bit less along Fontenay.
okay. That's all I had.
And the fence would be, as proposed, 5 foot from the property line, which would also make it 5 foot from the sidewalk. And we feel that that would be an adequate distance for
So
safety. and
from the back of curb, it's right at 20 feet to the fence post.
approximately, it kind of varies through there. It's along a
Yeah.
curve.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mark, before you go, you got a note on here that says, only phase one landscaping to be completed. What does that mean? Is there 2 phases of this?
Caught me.
It's not supposed to be there?
Left over from this last job. Remember that one?
Okay.
I'll pull that off of there.
Thank you, sir. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for the landscape plan.
Motion to approve the landscape plan for the Child Care Network. Any other staff or commissioner comments?
A motion, do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Thank you. And Lauren, you do have,
For the benefit of the applicant and the owner, this will be heard at the Maumelle City Council Monday, December 7th at 6 p.m., where your resolution for approval will be considered.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good luck.
Mr. Neri, next item on the agenda is an amendment to the Maumelle Master Street Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment to the Maumelle Master Street Plan is out of Section 54-107. I think this is D, specifically the map of the Master Street Plan. This pertains, as you all know, to the proposed abandonment of right-of-way of Lake Point Place by the charter school to help facilitate further construction of additional phases. The map will change because Lake Point Place obviously will no longer be a city street. Therefore, its classification will change on the map. And in time, based on the phasing plan that I've seen, Lake Point Place will cease to exist altogether and will be covered either by a building and or parking. Mr. Rob McGill is here this evening to try to answer any of your questions. Late in the day, as requested by some of you at the subcommittee meeting, Mr. Blake Butler was able to complete a survey of Lake Point Place, which I handed out to you tonight. This is a recommendation to the Maumelle City Council.
Mr. Neri, so we all understand, all this is doing tonight is abandoning Lake Point.
You're recommending to the City Council.
Recommendation to abandon it. This has nothing to do with anything else that may be happening in the future for that.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Just want to make sure that that was clear.
Absolutely not.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
of staff. Have we ever done this before?
I have never done this before in my career.
No one's ever asked to have anything abandoned. They want the city to pay for it.
Okay, touche. I have a question of Mr. McGill.
Before we get to that, does any other commissioners have questions of staff?
I just have some requests on the plat itself.
Okay, but nothing for staff right now. Mr. McGill, would you state your name and address for the record, please, sir?
Rob McGill, 63 River Road Drive West, Mayflower, Arkansas, Executive Director, Academics Plus Charter School.
This is just basically, when you build your new building, it's going to be right up to this point. And the actual street will not be removed until later on in your plans, correct?
Right. We'll continue to use the street next year. And if we start, what we're trying to do is we're going to try to submit a site plan soon for a new high school and gymnasium in that area. We had to do it in phases because we had to continue to educate and we had to continue to have a traffic pattern. That road will be there until a completely new parking lot and road can circumvent it and actually give us a longer stack in the parking lot. But right now, until we'll have to do phases on the high school. We build part of the high school and gym. That's site plan stuff that will come later. But we'll use this road until the new parking lot's built that we can use, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Because we can't tear down all the buildings. We got to get rid of that E building, the big gray building in the middle, and the F building, which is the old strip mall where Lolita's was. But we can't tear both down because we can only tear one down at a time and educate the kids at the same time as build.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Anybody else have questions of Mr. McGill?
Hi, Rob. How you
Hey, good.
I'd like to get the ownership shown on here correctly, and get the reference of the ownership shown correctly. We're not for sure who owns that.
The
Do you know?
Maumelle Foundation for Education owns all the lots
And list
on
the
both sides.
instrument for that ownership.
Okay, I'm not sure
I
about
don't know
that.
what that is.
Yeah, but Maumelle Foundation for Education owns all the lots surrounding on all three sides.
I've not seen a survey to that effect. So
Okay,
I just
we'll
want
get
to
that.
make sure that it's
Yes.
on there.
We can do that.
Any other
And
questions?
The same thing, you know, if any additional easements, just for the whole plat. You know, if there's anything that's been filed, as easements came later, if it's part of the right-of-way dedication that was on there, you know, there should have been some instruments that dedicated that right-of-way at some point in time, and it's not shown either. I assume the city of Maumelle owns it. I know, but there should be an instrument that dedicated that by ordinance. And it should be filed by final plat. So, and since you know we've not done this before, and we don't really have a set of regs in place, you're just going to have to kind of bear with our request. That way, we make sure the ownership's correctly identified, the legal description is shown, but the ownership being clearly identified. Because you know you've got a legal description here, and it's to be abandoned, and there's no record of ownership on the whole plat. So we need that.
Okay.
Mr. McGill, that needs to be to City Clerk Clausen by noon on Wednesday, December the 2nd, in order to be on the agenda for the City Council on December the 7th.
Can we make sure the dates are updated on the plat? This is from '08 currently, or survey.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we make a recommendation to the city council of the proposed amendment to the Maumelle Master Street Plan per section 54-107 in the affirmative.
And as well as other comments that have been made.
Yeah.
Include those. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, you're welcome.
Appreciate your patience.
No problem. Appreciate you honoring our requests. What I would like, and not to say that we do this to some extent, but what I'd like to do is request of Mr. Neri to, we have procedures in place, things that we see on preliminary plats, site plans, and requirements, and not to say that this is something that we typically see, but I would like for the commissioners to come to a consensus on what we want to see from an applicant. And although this is the first one, and we kind of ran by a little bit of the seat of our pants, to be quite honest, I would like for us to get a little bit more procedural with the requirements. That way, when it comes before us, we're not, guessing and second guessing, and we want to see this or that. Number one, it's a lot more fair to the applicant as they're coming through and have an understanding. So, and I think I don't know for sure if City of Little Rock has something in place, but they do require a survey. I do know that, so that's why we required it this time.
I think some things can be done by staff to get you something together. However, a lot of this is dictated by state statute, as Attorney Norris would attest to. We didn't have a lot of time to get this together on a short month, but I understand what you're saying. We can get something together.
Yeah, and then that way, when the applicant comes in again, or whomever that may be, and they want to abandon it,
Maybe Mr. McGill won't need to do this for a while after this. So,
Yeah, the next abandonment in about 20 years from now.
Well, we had to jump through hoops as well too. We just met last week, and so
True. So, Jim, can you take that on?
yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. We've already voted on that one, so the next item on the agenda is proposed amendment to the Maumelle Master Street Plan.
Thank you.
City of Maumelle.
Mr. Chairman, this is a proposed amendment to the Maumelle Master Street Plan. The map specifically showing a new connection at Counts Massey and Country Club Parkway. I can't think of a better representative to speak to this than the mayor of Maumelle himself, if you have any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions of staff? Hearing no questions, Mr. Mayor, would you care to address the commission since he put you on the spot?
Well, I guess I can't blame you for it. I signed the letter, so basically this came after some was brought forth to the city of possibly putting a roundabout in the area of Country Club Parkway and Counts Massey. And after consultation with Mr. Neri, most cities don't place a roundabout on their master street plan. They don't designate where a roundabout would be. It's an intersection, basically, is what they are. And then they turn the intersection into a roundabout. And so the only way that we knew to do this was to put a connection on the master street plan between those two streets. Doesn't mean that one's going to go there. Doesn't mean it's going to be a roundabout. But that's to make a connection there that would show a future connection may be made there. That's why the request is before you at this time.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions of the mayor? And the only thing I saw on that was that where that location is, where it's coming around that curve in Count Massey, boy, that looks dangerous. There's a lot of traffic going through there. But I presume that the engineers would design it in such a way that would minimum.
And that's correct. And I don't think you would see a T intersection go at that location. You would not see a T intersection. It would have to be tied in to Counts Massey, and it would not be a hard right-hand turn. It would be a T intersection there at that point. And that's why, that's why I don't think that's actually what's going to occur there. I mean, if anything goes there, it'd be a roundabout, and then the engineers could take that into account.
Any other questions, comments? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We recommend to the city council the proposed changes in the master street plan under section 54-106 for the city of Maumelle.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussions on that motion? All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Neri, next item on the agenda is a proposed amendment to Maumelle City Code, section 70-150.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a matter of fact, items 7, 8, and 9 are all proposed amendments to Maumelle City Code. They all pertain to the Garden Oaks subdivision. In these, I'm going to defer mostly to City Attorney Norris, since he drafted these proposed amendments.
City Attorney.
Here we go.
So these ordinances, if passed, would allow the city council to accept certain alleys for dedication to the city that is not currently permitted.
I'm going to interject something here. Pardon me. Whether you vote for a do pass or a do not pass recommendation, this is still moving on to the city council.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the city attorney. How do we get here? By this, I mean, were you directed with a resolution from the city council to do what?
No, there was no resolution. The city council made a motion that I draft ordinances to submit to the city council or to the planning commission to move forward with not these specific ordinances, but a change to the city code that would allow the city to accept dedication of Garden Oaks Alley.
That's to allow the city to actually do public work on private property or questionable private property. Is that correct?
That is to allow the city to, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because currently the Garden Oaks Alley has not been accepted for dedication by the city council. Our current code states what has to occur before the city can accept dedication. As that alley is, and perhaps other alleys in the city as well, those alleys can never be in a position to where the city could accept dedication because certain steps haven't been taken prior to that. And it's sort of at this juncture not very feasible that those will ever occur.
Okay. In subcommittee meeting, we were talking about looking at that land and looking at those lots. Could you pass that down to my two engineers? And I will say this right up front. I'm a little biased. This was my first house in Maumelle. Okay. I was the fifth house in that subdivision. Whenever I built my house, now I'm not a surveyor, but I did go out there with a tape because this was a custom-built house. I'd never had any dealings with this builder before. So when he started laying out my lot, I went out there and measured to check and make sure that while I had pins up, because I had a survey done, and there were stakes up, that he was putting my house where we had discussed it. And let me tell you that, quite frankly, at the rear, that 10-foot easement, that's grass. On the outside of that 10-foot easement is where the concrete alley starts. So that pretty much tells me that that alley doesn't belong to the lot owner, if I'm looking at this correctly. And again, this, there was questions brought up in subcommittee, so I thought I would lay personal experience. Now, I was one of the fortunate ones that whenever I built this house, it was going to be our last house, but my status changed. I was able to move into a two-story house. Didn't think I was going to be able to do that. So we had an opportunity. I sold my house in one day. I sold it myself. I got more for it than I paid, which that's the American dream. And I moved into a house over in the other side of town that has its problems too. But with that being said, and being familiar with this area, while spending public money on something that was quite possibly left by a developer for the owners of the property to take care of, and them not doing it, that's one thing. But if you look at the prices of those homes in that subdivision, if for some reason that subdivision, the prices of those houses, because of something like an rear access alley easement, was to start to fall, that's going to affect the prices of the subdivision houses next door in the next subdivision over. And we could end up with an area of Maumelle that I don't have a highly educated brain, so I'm going to use the word blighted. It could happen. And this could be a determining factor. And while this may not be the best route to get this dedicated to the city, with the current information that we have, I see no other option. There was talk about waivers. Let's get a variance. Well, in order to ask for a variance, you have to own the property. That's one of the biggest problems with the alleys. There have been people that's done a lot of research on this, and it's gray at best. It's gray at best. So I just urge you to think about, let's fix the problem instead of the fault. Just think about that.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner Todd. And I had a lot of conversations with the city attorney today, too, as well. I don't have a recommendation on this action, but I will make a recommendation on the subsequent, and he's asked us to hear each one. And this, what they're asking for is, if you will, is a kind of an exception, if you will, for us to entertain it. But the other two, they all go together. And I don't know what the ownership is either, and I'm not for sure if Caleb does or Mr. Norris does either. So I understand your position on that and where you're coming from. From this plat, it appears that the property owner, and I've not looked at a survey to make that determination. So my issue with the way that this has been done is that, you know, my biggest concern, and you'll see that based upon I guess a proposal that I'm going to put before you, is that I just think that where we were at before, we were kind of putting Garden Oaks in the box and making changes in our code specifically to address this Garden Oaks issue. And I think that, you know, and you've been on the commission long enough to understand this, is that other people have come with similar problems. And I can say that to my knowledge, I don't know of any monies that's been dedicated, and I don't think it's our position at the Planning Commission to decide how much money. If it's $1, it's $1 million. You know, those happen on Monday nights, you know, and not on Thursday nights. So what I'm trying to prevent is to keep us and steer us a path that we're not going to regret from other folks that may come to us and ask for this type of help. So, you know, instead of, you know, I asked the question at subcommittee meeting of City Attorney Norris that, you know, is there any way that this is not specifically addressing Garden Oaks? I mean, I read it. I mean, it's the only place, but there's other places in town that, you know, perhaps if ownership is more clear, whatever the case is, they can come. So I think, you know, after an hour or more today of his time and Mr. Neri's time, I think that I've arrived at a position where I'm comfortable with amending the code and moving forward. Unfortunately, we got to hear this one first, and then I'll introduce the next one. But it's actually not restraint, or I don't guess the right word is. It's specific for anybody. If anybody, if there's a subdivision out there, whether it's a POA or whoever owns it, and if it was platted before December 2004, whatever the date is, meaning that if it was platted before our codes took effect, they can come back and ask council to deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
If I may clarify, if it was built before,
yeah.
There's a classification for alleys. Also, just a quick correction. So we're on number 7 on the agenda, which is dealing with section 7150, which actually is included in the ordinance that I gave.
Yeah, but you've listed them. I don't know. I don't mind discussing it and passing it out. But if you want action on this, then, which I don't have a problem with the way that this is worded, as we discussed earlier today.
The way the Planning Commission agenda is, I've given you all 2 ordinances, one amending Chapter 54 and one amending 70. We have split the ordinance amending Chapter 70 into the 2 separate sections that it'll be amending, which is Section 150 and Section 151. So if what you were thinking for 150, which is, so, for example, that's 150.
Right.
And then the next one is 151.
Right.
So if someone was wanting to amend the language, it would probably be prudent to do it before it was voted on.
Okay, so you want to do it now?
Yes.
Long, short.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I propose, how we change the language, and I worked with the city attorney on this. I'll just keep one. You guys can pass it around.
You want me to give a few out?
Yeah, there may be some of that.
There's a
how
few
many
extra.
how many copies you make?
A dozen.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can give one to Dan.
If somebody wants to take a look at it. Goes in the packet.
So this replaces what you had already.
Yeah.
Correct, and I can explain. There's no additional proposed language. Just a certain portion of a sentence was removed. So the highlighted portion is the addition that y'all are considering. The language that has a strike through it is the language that Commissioner Johnson is suggesting be removed before the ordinance is submitted to the City Council.
So basically what my concern was I thought we were being very specific with the Garden Oaks folks and understanding what's before them and what the council is trying to accomplish in whatever means and measures that ends up being. But what I wanted is that I did not want it to be specific. I think that and there's, I don't know how many, there's 2 or 3, there's a couple that come to mind. And if they feel it's necessary and want to come before it would be the council and say, we want to be taken in too, then they have to entertain that.
Well, if one of them you're talking about is Nancy Lopez, I think those plots or the lots go to the center of the alleyway.
They very well could.
Just
I
the
don't
same
know.
way that over on Country Club Parkway, in the first phase, the two little streets or alleyways that come off of Fontenay and come off Fontenay and go behind the first row of houses. Those lots actually go to the center of that concrete driveway.
I would hate for this commission or anything regarding council to create or make an amendment to our ordinance that is exclusive.
Well,
And-
and that may be my fault because that's what I asked this.
I know it was, and
attorney
I'm
to
not
do.
trying to step on your toes. I just didn't, or not that I disagreed. I just think that we shouldn't be exclusive. We should have the opportunity. If someone else is in this boat, they should be able to be heard as well. And the way that it was written is the only way that it could be heard is if they had replat expressly states that the alley is dedicated to the city. Well, we don't know of any others.
Right.
So, I don't know the situation with those other subdivisions per se. I just know that they have been contentious in the past, and they've asked for certain things too as well. And if it ends up being platted or not accepted prior to us being codes, I don't know the right wording for that, Caleb, but at any rate, they would have the opportunity to come to council and be heard and that entertained.
Just to clarify, that doesn't mean any entity or alley would have a right to be accepted for dedication. Just that whatever that is could come to the city council and petition it, and if the city council so chose, we wouldn't be back amending the code again.
I do have a question. Why was the date December 1, 2014 selected?
That was the date that the category of rear access, residential rear access alleys was passed by the city council. And so prior to that date, there was no classification of an alley in the code, if I'm not mistaken.
Turtle Creek. That was the Turtle Creek subdivision, correct? Was it before or after we changed that?
Turtle Creek was before that.
Before. Yeah, that's what created that opportunity. What was going on is that some of us felt that the builders, were providing these alleys, but they were not to standard as a means of perhaps some cost savings to the development and not meeting code, and they were providing problems. And so we changed that to make sure that the developer, if he wanted to keep them, fine. If he wanted to dedicate them, fine. But either way, they were built to our standard.
But again, it wasn't only alleys. That wasn't the only problem.
That's true.
Subpar drainage systems, subpar asphalt, subgrade base, everything.
Materials.
And as soon as people started moving in, the POA had to start fixing things because they weren't built right. You still have a private residential subdivision in Maumelle, but it has to be built to a city standard, and that Turtle Creek is what was the impetus for that. So
There's no differentiator between in the requirements of our code and what the developer has to do if he wants to obtain private or if he wants to dedicate it. So, and I guess what would be, you're going to help me out here, Mr. Norris, is that we're going to amend, or what I propose is that how do we need to structure this so we're able to move it forward and the council can act on
Amend
it?
first and get a second and a vote, and then it goes to the.
So we're on item 6, and this is 7, or you're telling me it was 6?
We're on item 7,
Or 6, excuse me.
and this is for items 7 and 8.
And 8, okay.
And it's actually section 1 of the ordinance and section 2 of the ordinance.
Okay.
So section 1 deals with number 7 on our agenda. Section 2 deals with agenda item number 8.
And this is I'm looking for the number, this is 150, correct?
Correct. Well, excuse me, so this is 150.
Right.
And then that's 152.
Yeah.
151.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we amend the code for section 150, section 1, part E, to read as follows. Subsections B, C, and D shall not apply to a residential rear access alley if the alley was constructed prior to December 1, 2014, and the ordinance accepting dedication of the alley explicitly waives the requirements of these subsections.
Putting that forth as a motion for section 7150. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do I have a second that? And I have a second. All those in favor of the amendment, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay.
Now we have a motion to approve it, correct?
Yes.
Recommend for approval.
Recommend.
So wait a minute. We're still a long ways from recommending approval of this thing.
Well,
No, for that
That
section.
would be the next that would be the next action.
Yes.
So if we were
But
to
there's a
up or
lot
down.
more discussion that needs to go on at this point, I would think.
Certainly.
Does any other commissioners have any other questions? Is anybody in the here tonight wishing to speak on these items? Mr. Lewis, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. Preston Lewis, 14 Braeswood Place. I think it was a very appropriate amendment. There's always a certain preference when you're doing legislation. I know that you try not to make it too specific to any one situation, so I definitely appreciate, I think, the intent of that amendment. The one thing that, and I attended the subcommittee meeting, the one thing that I wanted to sort of come back to after I had a chance to reflect on that meeting was the notion that somehow this is a twisting and a turning and sort of bending ourselves into a pretzel. I don't see this as an existential change into our code, as merely a grandfathering. And I view this situation with these alleys as a loose thread. And it's a chance that, as a city, based on the corrected final plat, which, Mr. Fisher, your counterpart in 1988 signed, and this board, not you gentlemen, but the Maumelle Planning Commission approved on a 5-1 vote on a zoning change with a plat approval. The minutes don't reflect anything that opposes the issue with the general plat note that says that the city will take these in the way of a donation and maintain them. Furthermore, there is a letter from Mr. Holloway, and I've got the plat for you. There's a letter from Mr. Holloway that states, it is dated prior to the Planning Commission meeting. You can see the highlighted portion that states that the alleys as shown on the plat are constructed of concrete and will be dedicated to the city. I've also included the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting. If it was the intention of anyone to add that plat note after the signature, then I would be surprised that the letter was sent. Normally, if you attempt to do a subterfuge, you don't send a letter to the city manager, Shelton, prior to the meeting stating this is what we're going to do. So I believe firmly that there is an action that was taken by a city body, in the case of the Maumelle Planning Commission, that approved that corrected final plat, in which opened the door for a commitment. Now, it's sort of halfway because, as City Attorney Norris knows, you cannot accept dedication until it is done by the city board or the city council. Well, that was not done. So there's one of two steps that occurred. But nowhere in that period, from the time that it was approved in 1988 to the present day, did the city make any attempt to say no. And I think that the city legally probably could have done that somewhere in the 1990s and said, no, we thought this through and there's issues that we may have. We're going to turn it down. That wasn't done. So it has sort of stayed in limbo for all these years, and here we are. And now I sense difficulty in saying no finally because of the condition and because of the city's prior determinations to not say no, but not to say yes either. So that's why I view this as a loose thread. The title company has been communicated with. The issue that it's private property, I think Mr. Todd said it well, it is murky at best. If you ask Standard Abstract Title right now, they're going to refer to these documents and the bills of assurance, which are in concurrence with that plat, to say City of Maumelle owns it. So I do think that there are issues there that create some problems. Now, in fairness to what Commissioner Johnson said last week, I recognize that it's an unusual thing. Absolutely recognize that. But whereas I don't see this as an existential change, I see it as an enabler to allow the city council to make this decision. And so I would ask for a recommendation to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Come forward and state your name and address for the record, sir.
I'm Steve Mosley, 16 Riverwood Place. I'm the alderman for Ward 1, one of them. This is a very difficult issue, and there's a lot of emotion to it. There's a lot of desire to right wrongs and apply standards of the way we do things now to things that happened 25 years ago. This group of individuals here on the Planning Commission are probably, you all are the brains of the zoning and the planning and all that. And I'm going to be relying on you all quite a bit as far as how to vote on this. All that being said, I think if you have any doubts about what you're doing, I'd prefer you err on the side of caution, and not let it be an emotional issue. There may be problems down the road. That's my worry, and I appreciate the aldermen that are trying to fix some things. I just don't know exactly how to do it, but those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Are there any other commissioner comments?
I'll say a few other things, or just one comment. You know, I was not really in favor of the way that it was written, and I made that known at subcommittee meeting. Although I'm not against trying to right a wrong at the council level and whatever they end up deciding. What I think what's before you, independent of emotion, is an ability for the council to act. And something that I'm comfortable, me personally, I can't speak for the rest of you, but me personally, I'm comfortable with the change, giving them that ability, but not precluding anybody else for that opportunity that we may or may not know of, per se. So this enables, if you will, that issue to be addressed. And my first comment to Mr. Norris, when I told him on the phone, I said, well, if City Mall Mail owns it, why don't they come and ask for the variance or waiver? Why is that, a problem? And, but I don't, he's nervous about that, and I understand why, because of the grayness in the area. So throwing that to the side, they can still act on their wishes and desires and however they want to handle it, and then decide, who's going to pay for that or whatever is before them at the time. And so the change is, and although I'm not enamored about the change, it does enable a way to address these alleyways that were put in, I guess, pre-ordinance to the Turtle Creek issue.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I will make a comment that your amendment being put forth, I still don't see that it changes that this is for a very specific project, period. And as I said at subcommittee meeting, I'm still opposed to it. So
I understand. Well, it was initiated based upon a specific project. Yep. Much like Turtle Creek initiated us to change quite a bit in our ordinance regarding, those items. And that's when, things end up coming up. So I respect you for that, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to provide a means to be able to move forward, and Mr. Mosley's comments, I appreciate that about voting up or down, but I want to make it clear that we're just, if this goes, we're just providing a vehicle for you to be able to act. It's not a means of whether it's right or wrong or who owns the property or you should spend $1 or $1 million. That's not the position of the Planning Commission. It's the position of the council. So,
Mr. Johnson, come forward, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Well, number one, I'm Birch Johnson at 38 Fairway Woods Circle.
No relation.
And no. Well, dadgummit, I was fixing to support everything he said, and now he indicated we were no relation, so that makes it more legal and everything. So I'd like to agree with Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, and I'd also like to agree with our alderman out back there, Preston Lewis, and everything. And I'd like to say, hey, guys, I went through this in 2003, and I wasn't smart enough to get it done. I sympathized with it. I tried, and I just ran into a brick wall. And now you're listening, and the council needs to listen. These people have a problem. And, hey, Maumelle has a problem, as Preston Lewis pointed out, and everything like that. We can duck it, but I think we've got y'all made a good start tonight from our city attorney and everything like that, but we can't duck our heads and run from it. John, I think you made a good point. You told me at one time you used to sleep up on the hill at lunch or something like that when you had that piece of property. But anyway, hey.
Lunch there.
But the bottom line is, thank you for addressing it, and I really believe that we can't duck our heads anymore. We got to do what we think is right. You and then your advice to the council. And hopefully out of this group and the council group, a good decision will come out. And, you know, I really appreciate their stand and everything. John, your good speech. Craig, your input, and Preston's.
Thank you, Birch. There are no other questions. We have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded.
I've just got one more comment, if I can. Just kind of going on what Alderman Mosley stated, and, you know, after Commissioner Johnson's amendment to this, I think this is the way to go. With, you know, as Alderman Mosley said, we shouldn't be acting on a motion. This really just opens up dialogue and actually increases oversight rather than putting a categorical no on any such issue that may come forward in the future. Gray at best is a gross overstatement of the status of the particular Garden Oaks alleys. I mean, I'd wager to say if a title commitment piece of business were to come into my office, I wouldn't do it without filing a lawsuit and getting a judge's signature. So, I mean, this, you know, if there's concern about people just opposed to it, rest assured these people have quite the road to travel to even get close to having these alleys be able to be dedicated to the city. But, you know, let's remove a piece of bureaucratic red tape and at least let a dialogue be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Gershner. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion?
It was motion for approval or motion? I'm lost.
To amend.
To amend. Motion to amend.
Motion to amend.
Oh, thank you.
We have a motion to amend on the table. All those in favor on the motion to amend? We're not approving it yet. We're just making a motion to amend
Correct.
Mr. Johnson's.
We already did that.
That's why I was asking
Did they have
for
that?
an order.
No, because I stopped it.
No, you stopped the motion to
I
recommend
stopped the
approval.
vote. I stopped the vote on this.
What's your record? Either way, we can work it out. But I thought we did take a vote.
On the amendment.
On the amendment,
your
so that-
wording, I have
so-
that. I have
It
a
passed.
motion, a second, and approval, yes.
Okay, so then
This is actual item.
Okay.
motion.
who made the
Yes.
amendment on item 7 then? Or who made the? Excuse me, who made the
No
motion?
one, no one's
Okay.
made that
That's all
motion.
Then I-
because everything was going through, and I thought I stopped it for further discussion of this whole issue. And I don't remember, but if you say we took the vote,
Yeah, we've been discussing
Yeah,
the
that was
amendment.
just
Okay.
that was just to amend the wording.
Did we
We
also?
didn't actually,
There has not been a motion to recommend
Right.
this for passage.
item number 7 has no motion yet.
I know that, but I guess I dozed off on the approval of the amendment.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll make. Did you have a a comment, comment, on Mr. that? For Kirschner? the recall voting on an amendment, did we vote to amend both items 8 and 9?
No.
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 Just the one.
Just 7.
Just 7.
Well, that's what I was advised
7
today.
not 8 and 9.
Taking them one at a time.
Yeah, I had asked city attorney that question
Okay.
earlier today.
So now I would entertain a motion for approval of the amending, or the recommending to the city the amendment to 7150 as amended.
So move.
Second.
Motion to second. All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no? No. All right, item number 8. Mr. Neri?
City Attorney Norris.
got to do this one too, no?
We're in the same place as we were a moment ago.
So I have to do this one too.
You know,
If you flip over to the
motion
second
to
page, you see it?
amend?
Yeah, I have to make a motion to amend. So we're going to make.
Right now?
Yes, sir, if that's
No sense
acceptable.
of rehashing it.
If it's okay with you?
Same thing.
Yeah. It is, for the most part. It's the same sentence, I think, identically stricken, to tell you the truth, or pretty close to it.
Yes.
So I make, Mr. Chair, if I would, I'd like to make a motion to item 8 on Maumelle City Code 7151. And you have it there attached, and I'm going to read it, which is item out of section 2. Number 3, by ordinance specially passed for such a purpose, the city council may accept dedication of a residential rear access alley at any time if the alley was constructed prior to December 1, 2014, and if the ordinance accepting dedication expressly states that the city council intends to allocate funds to repair or rehabilitate the residential rear access alley.
That is a motion. Do I have a
There's a
second?
Second, oh, well, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor to amend, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Now, I need a motion to recommend to the city directors
Mr. Chairman, I
70-151.
make a motion, we recommend 70-151 as amended to the city council, and it do pass.
Second.
And I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? No. All right, now we're moving on to 9.
I'll just ask Caleb.
Caleb? Instead of going through the procedure.
No,
There's no change on this one.
proposed amendment to the proposed ordinance being recommended.
All right, Commissioners, do we have any questions of the city attorney? No questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we make a recommendation to the city council due pass for changes in the master street plan, section 54-106.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? No.
I would like to I called, I was late reading the packet a little bit today. I knew this issue needed to be addressed, but I appreciate City Attorney Norris's entertaining me. I think I started about 2 this afternoon. We finished around 4, and when we got to that, and I appreciate him doing that and working. I talked with Mr. Neri as well, too, and maybe others were involved. I'm not for sure, but I appreciate working through the issue.
You show potential as a prospective city clerk at some point.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
All right, this time I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting and move into the liaison reports. Commissioner Andrews, you had November 2nd.
November 2nd, motion was made to waive competitive bidding for the fire department software. That passed. Petition to abandon a public street. That passed. That was for the Academics Plus Charter School that we heard tonight. Accepting the donation of property, which we looked at tonight, and that passed. Motion was made to give the mayor the right to extend the lease on Park on the River to Team Summit LLC, and that passed. Then there was more discussion on the alleys. Mayor reported that the haunted house brought in $4,000, which was pretty awesome. And hometown Thanksgiving will be November 26th from 11:30 to 1.
And if you want to volunteer, show up at 10:30.
There you go. And that's all I have.
Okay, I had November 16th, although I wasn't physically present. I did watch the video, which was nice because it was a very short meeting. First item, Representative Mark Lowry came and presented the city with 2 checks for $5,000. They were out of GIF grant money. $5,000 of that went to police and fire for their Citizens Academy. and $5,000 went for the audio visual, which is the camera is going to be pointing out towards the crowd.
Okay.
Next item. There was a public hearing on Lake Point Place street abandonment. That had discussions on it, and then it will come to final resolution, I believe, on December 7th, first meeting of the board. Tree Board appointed Dana Nash to its board. Next item was Resolution 2015-51, authorizing the mayor to enter into the agreement to extend the lease for DF&A for the offices they occupy here at City Hall. There was another resolution that was handed out that night, was Resolution 2015-52, and that was to add the past due sanitation bills and send them, and I guess certify them and send them on to Pulaski County to include that in the past due billings.
Personal property taxes.
Yeah, personal property. Basically, that was it.
There was one more item that we all, in the mayor's comments, Maumelle made 2015 volunteer of the city of the year again, and we all volunteers. We all participate.
How many years is that now? 11?
I don't know exactly. 10 to 11, 12, somewhere in that range.
We need a pin.
All right, December liaison, December 7th, Commissioner Gershner, and December 21st, Commissioner Ramsey. Reminder that next month our subcommittee is on the 10th, the Planning Commission will be on the 17th.
Mr. Chairman, if you please.
Sir.
I want to commend you as a commission. This was a difficult agenda. There were things that City Attorney Norris had never had to do, things that I'd never had to do, things that you had never heard before. And we had a lot of correspondence going back and forth. All 7 of you attended the Planning Commission subcommittee meeting, and we continued to correspond and work on this up until about 6 o'clock this evening. And I appreciate all the efforts that you all put into this. And with that being said, December's agenda is shaping up to be pretty heavy too. So need your further commitment as always for that one so we can end the year well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. If there's nothing else coming forward, the commission.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
We'll stand adjourned.
Hey, go ahead.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, we're going.
Yes, that's what you said last week.
Are we there this week?